Hi, I'm Bill DiGilio, and I'd like to do a brief continuation of the video I did previously to this, which was how many chords do I actually need to know. In this one, I'm going to talk about scale forms. Again, this is a thorny issue for many guitarists. They get the impression that they have to learn hundreds of different scale forms to be able to navigate the neck. Now again, as with chords, having a lot of scale patterns and positions under your fingers is not a bad thing. But if you need a place to start and a way just to basically organize your practice in the beginning, I'll give you my system, which I think will be a good basic system, and then you can expand from there, which I'll discuss later in the video. So to draw a connection to my previous video, in which I talked about 3 chord forms for every major type. So as you may remember, for a C major chord, I can play it 3 different places on the neck, at least. Now, there are many more forms, but I'll limit myself to these 3 that I talked about previously. We can play a C major chord on the 3rd fret. We can play a C major chord on the 8th fret, and a C major chord on the 12th fret. Now the benefit of this, of being able to access those chords quickly, is not only will you be able to find the chords quickly, but you'll be able to find the scale closely associated with each of those chords quickly as well. If the C major chord is here, there's a major scale position right there also. By just going down 1 fret. So the chord is in 3rd position on the 3rd fret. The scale is technically in 2nd position. And in the comments section of this video, I will include a link to a PDF which will have all the scale forms that I'll be discussing in this video there. So you won't have to transcribe them from the video. Now, the 2nd form on the 8th fret, C major chord, C major scale, 7th fret or 7th position. And that one happens to be a 2-octave scale. Major chord, major scale. Same thing on the 12th fret, major chord, major scale. Now, 2 of these patterns are 1-octave scales, as you've noticed. So what I would recommend doing is, once you get comfortable playing just the scale in its basic form, you can expand it to upper and lower strings. For example, here's my 1-octave scale in the second position. Notice I can expand that by going down to the 6th string to get some other notes in that scale, and I can expand it upward by going to the 2nd and 1st string, excuse me. So I have all these notes in 2nd position basically available for that C major scale. I can do the same thing up here. On the 12th fret, the 1-octave scale is here, and I can extend it downward, and I can extend it upward to get some additional notes. And notice if I can play the scales in that position, those give me some additional options when I'm improvising. Since a lot of times we like to refer to scales when improvising over chords, if we have 3 different locations we can access those scales, we have some additional options to use when we're improvising. We're not stuck in one position, for example. Now, this could also be done with minor scales as well. Just as I have a minor chord in a position, I can have a minor scale which relates to it in a very close by position, if not the same one. So as you remember from the previous video, C minor chord on the 3rd fret, C minor scale on the 3rd fret. C minor chord on the 8th fret, C minor scale on the 8th fret. C minor chord on the 11th fret, C minor scale on the 10th fret. And again, in the case of the 3rd fret scale and the 11th fret scale, I can add the additional notes once I'm ready. Here's the basic scale pattern. I can extend it upward, or I can extend it downward. And notice that each of these minor scales that I've outlined are natural minor. I can adapt these to other minor forms and modes if I desire, which will be the topic of another video in the future. But this will at least give you some minor forms you could base your improvisation on. So here again, I have options. So if I'm playing a song in C minor, I have at least 3 places I can access some melodic ideas. There's the chord, C minor. So that will allow me to break out of one position playing. I have a little more flexibility as far as where I want to play things on the neck, having at least 3 locations to play, not only chordally, but melodically now on the neck. Now in the previous video, I went through all 12 roots to demonstrate where I could find all the chords. I won't do that in this case. I don't think I need to, since you understand the principle, but I'll do 2 others just briefly. So let's say, for example, G. G major chord, G major scale. So chord on the 3rd fret, scale on the 2nd fret. Chord on the 7th fret, scale on the 7th fret. Chord on the 10th fret, scale on the 9th fret, or 9th position. I'll do one more. E flat. Chord on the 3rd fret, scale. Chord on the 6th fret, scale on the 5th fret. E flat on the 11th fret, scale on 10th position. Or, 10th position, excuse me. So that gives me some possibilities as far as getting around the neck. And if you haven't noticed, actually, I'll give you this in a larger context. These previous 2 videos, the video I did previously concerning chords, and this current one, are both about navigating the neck and having some system which allows me to get to where I need to go musically quickly. That's the concept of both of these, really, is navigating the neck. The one disadvantage we have that keyboard players do is the keyboard, as you know, is a very clear user interface. There's patterns of black and white keys. So even very young students can very quickly learn to identify a C from an F or a D from a B flat on a keyboard. That's usually due because of the repeating pattern visually. And unfortunately on the guitar we don't have that option. All the frets look pretty much the same. So there's quite a few guitarists that play quite well, know a lot of chords and scales, but cannot identify the notes on the neck. Now to mention one of my other previous videos, I do have a video in my on my channel, which concerns finding notes on the neck, which I highly recommend you watch and practice. But in addition to that, being able to visualize things on the neck graphically, even if we don't know the exact notes instantaneously that we're playing, will have a lot of advantages. Eventually, these shapes, if you play them enough, will connect with the sounds that are coming out so that they coordinate with each other. You can hear a sound, you know what finger shape will produce those sounds, and vice versa. So that's what these two videos are designed to do, to give you a basic way of navigating the fingerboard and locating things quickly to get you started. Now, are there other ways to do this? Yes. You may hear of other players that have different approaches. For example, Jimmy Bruno, the famous jazz guitarist, has a system of major scales that he uses. He uses combinations of strings and fret numbers to designate his scales, like 6V2 and etc. I think he has 5 scales that he uses and refers to. Then there is something called the zone system, which requires you to learn 12 different major scale patterns. And that's perfectly valid, but it's just a different way of approaching it. And then some people are able to think of scales in a linear fashion up and down the neck. So for example, people like jazz guitarist Pat Metheny tend to think linearly on the neck. So they'll recommend exercises, for example, of playing over songs or playing over chords using simply one string or 2 strings to break you out of the patterns that I've been just describing. Now that's seems contrary to what I've been describing, but it can also work with it. Both are useful. Patterns that you can find quickly on the guitar are certainly a good thing to do, and I'm sure Pat and most other guitarists have a visual aspect of those patterns. Then you may get to a point where you don't want to depend on those, or you want to get a little more freedom from those, and that's why playing linearly would be a good thing. But that would be a more advanced concept. So I would save that for once you're very comfortable with finding chords and scales at least 3 different places on the neck. Then you can start to think linearly and start to connect the scales that we just described. For example, if I'm playing down here in the, again, second position, C major, I may want to connect with the scale on the 7th position. So noticeably I seemingly moved between those 2 patterns. So that would be another option, a slightly more advanced version once you get more comfortable with playing in each position. So I would recommend position playing if you're just starting out or intermediate and want to get a good grasp of the fingerboard. Then you can explore some other options. Just as in my previous video, I talked about 9 chord forms. Will you probably need more than 9 chord forms if you're playing jazz? Most definitely. There are other altered and extended chords that you'll need to get some of the sounds that are expected in jazz. But most of the chord forms that are extended and altered will probably be based on the forms that you saw in the previous video. They'll just be slight changes or extensions of what I did in the previous video. So a lot of these concepts will connect eventually, okay, if you start to get a visual aspect of the fingerboard. So I recommend, so there again, I'll put a PDF of these scale shapes in the comment section of the video that you can check out if you don't know them already. And then do the same practice technique as we did in the previous video. Play a C major scale, 3 different positions. Play an F major scale, 3 different positions. B flat major scale, 3 different positions. Now in some cases, some scales may put you in a position requiring you to use open strings. you can just move those patterns up an octave, for example. So for example, if I'm talking about F major, here's the F major chord, as you may remember, for first fret. Now the F major scale requires me to go down 1 fret. So that would mean I would need to play open string chords to play that position. So in this case, what I can simply do is go up an octave. And I can play the chord on the 13th fret and the scale on the 12th fret. If you prefer not to use open strings, which is perfectly fine. So here again, I hope you've gotten something from this video. And just to give you a basic idea of how to approach the neck and start to learn some of the concepts that you'll need. If you have any comments, again, questions, criticisms, please leave them in the comments section. And if you've enjoyed the video, please like it. And please feel free to subscribe to my channel. It'll allow me to make more videos and to further expand on the topics that I talked about. These concepts I would consider for intermediates. There are a lot of videos that deal with very basic subjects like playing open string chords and playing simple melodies. But once you've accomplished those things, you may want to get into movable chords and movable scales, which is what I've been discussing previously. So again, thanks for watching and have a great day.